and welcome viewers. I am Pia and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World, and here are the top headlines. Israel's Prime Minister has hailed President Trump's Gaza peace plan after the UN Security Council endorsed it, stating that it promises peace and prosperity through demilitarization of Hamas. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry has also welcomed the resolution and called for its immediate implementation on the ground. China says it has lodged a strong protest with Japan during talks in Beijing as the two countries clash over Japanese Prime Minister Hasina Takeichi's comments on Taiwan. Beijing says top officials reiterated their objection to what they call Tokyo's erroneous remarks. US lawmakers are expected to advance a bill requiring the release of government records on Jeffrey Epstein after Trump's unexpected U-turn. The move comes after up to 100 Republicans signaled they would defy him, making passage of the file's Transparency Act all but certain. President Trump has stated that he will not rule out sending US troops to Venezuela as he signals that he is open to direct talks with Nicolas Maduro. Trump emphasized that he is willing to hear Maduro's proposals as Washington warns of further military escalation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will travel to Turkey on Wednesday in order to push for renewed negotiations with Russia to end the war. A Turkish source has emphasized that US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will also join the meetings as Kiev prepares new proposals for peace. Donald Trump has welcomed Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to Washington, D.C. for talks expected to advance F-35 jet sales and major business deals. The visit marks the Crown Prince's first trip to the U.S. since 2018 as Trump also pushes for progress on Israel-Saudi normalization. North Korea says South Korea's plan to build nuclear-powered submarines with U.S. approval will set off a nuclear domino in the region. Seoul and Washington say their new defense agreement includes a fresh commitment to fully disarm the North's nuclear program. Lebanese media has reported an Israeli drone strike on a car in southern town of Bint Jbeil. There is no immediate comment from the Israeli military at this time. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. Japan has now warned its citizens in China to step up safety precautions and avoid crowded places amid a deepening dispute between Asia's two largest economies over Japanese Prime Minister Hasina Takeichi's comments on Taiwan. China has urged its citizens not to travel to Japan in what could deal a sizable blow to Japan's economy, given that the Chinese currently make up nearly a quarter of all tourists there. Now, speaking on the advisory released by Japan, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has stated that the Chinese government will continue to protect the foreign citizens in China. Listen in.
中国政府一贯并将继续依法保护在华外国公民的安全。
Amid this diplomatic row, the head of the Asian and Oceanian Affairs Bureau at Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has visited China. Japanese media reported that during the trip, he was expected to discuss with Chinese officials about Prime Minister Takeichi's recent remarks. Hasina Takeichi, of course, sparked the most serious diplomatic clash in years when she told Japanese lawmakers this month that a Chinese attack on Taiwan, threatening Japan's survival, could trigger a military response. With us on the broadcast is Professor Hidekazu Sakai. He's a professor of Kansai Gadai University, joining us from Osaka in Japan. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, it was made very clear by Prime Minister Takeichi in the aftermath of her meeting with President Xi earlier in South Korea that she will be very transparent as far as the issue of Taiwan is concerned. She had made it clear during the meeting and right after when she had made certain remarks to the press as well. In your assessment, is what we're seeing from Beijing then an attempt by China to control the narrative?
Well, this Chinese reaction to Taiwan issue is kind of anticipated by the Japanese government. But at the same time, I think we should be aware that the Japanese government positions on Taiwan issue has never changed. Even since 1972, when Japan and China normalized their relations, Taiwan issue was clearly discussed. Then Japan say that only a peaceful reunification is option. But if you unify with China by force, that will be out of questions. So that implication was that that time, 1972, the United States force stationing in Japan would react to it by any kinds of means, including military means. Therefore, Japan is automatically is a part of this reaction. So China knows this. So as you kind of implied that this is kind of a discourse battle rather than a substantial diplomatic negotiation. And China wants to use Takaichi's statement that Taiwan issue can be, that what she said, can be the creating the security situation for Japan's existence. Therefore, I think China's position was that you don't want to talk about Taiwan in the first place. Even Taiwan, one word, you don't want to talk about it. But it's very, unreasonable for us because Taiwan is very, very close to our country. It's like a Sri Lanka to the India. So I think unimaginable for India not to talk about Sri Lanka for the India's the national security. So this is a kind of funny situation that it's we all Japanese people think, why are you so angry? It's so reasonable, and even diplomatic record we have made it clear that. So the thing is, we just did not talk about it, but the once we touched on it, China is so aggressive response to it. Therefore, this is going to be perhaps based upon Chinese very sensitive positions, and if even Japan is kind of calm, that China is very, very sensitive to it, and we should know why China is so sensitive to it.
Indeed, and there were also some rather shocking comments that had come forward from the Chinese Consul General in Osaka. I will not relay that over here because they were, frankly speaking, quite wild threats that were made. But the Chinese government has sought to distance itself from these comments. Regardless, it is a Chinese government representative who has made these. In light of now China taking this very aggressive stance, what do you think is really required to bring back the dialogue, the sort of rhetoric on both sides to parity, to what it was like before?
Well, the Consul General of China in Osaka, the statement was very, very aggressive. Even I would say, it's very dirty statement. I mean, it's just unbelievable, way of expression, and we all surprised. But at the same time, he just erased it, the message suddenly. So, what I understood was maybe that diplomat wants to appeal his loyalty to Xi Jinping rather than sending real message to Japan. And this guy was in Japan for a long time. I'm sure this diplomat likes Japan a lot. I mean, even the other the areas in Japan's diplomats like Japan. That's why they deploy in Japan. But they have to say those things because they have to show their attitude that they are so loyal to the Xi Jinping, because Xi Jinping, the regime in China at this point is very, I would say, extremely authoritative, maybe even dictatorship. Therefore, those diplomats cannot behave as normal diplomats, rather than showing their loyalty to the Xi Jinping. So I would say I'm sorry for those diplomats. At the same time, Japan should not really overreact to this. I mean, a lot of people reacted to it, but at this point, Ministry of the Foreign Affairs Japan has been so calm, and they kind of knew it, and so I don't think the Japanese government will use the persona non grata, policy, so that they can kick them out. But I don't think they do it. And if they do it, it's going to be more counter, productive the policy. Therefore, I think we have seen situation like China is so angry, they're red face, and at the same time Japan's kind of calm and kind of watching to see what's going on. So there are the very interesting contrasts.
Indeed, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, of putting all of this, what is happening, into context and explaining it to our viewers. With that, we shift our focus from what's taking place, the tension simmering between Japan and China, towards what's happening in Europe. We're now learning that Russia and Ukraine have issued conflicting battlefield reports as the fighting continues across several regions. The Russian Ministry of Defense has stated that its forces struck 142 areas in Ukraine over the past 24 hours. Targets included fuel and energy facilities, railway infrastructure, long-range drone storage sites, and locations used by Ukrainian troops and foreign mercenaries. According to Russia, the strikes had destroyed several tanks and armored vehicles, 9 field guns and howitzers, electronic warfare stations, ammunition depots, and supply warehouses. The Russian ministry also reported repelling multiple Ukrainian attacks in Pokrovsk, Kharkiv, and Kupiansk regions. Meanwhile, Ukraine has reported a major overnight assault from Russian forces, stating that beginning at 8 p.m. on Sunday, Russia launched 2 Iskander-M ballistic missiles and 128 drones. Ukrainian air defenses have emphasized that they had shot down or suppressed 91 drones. Ukraine's Ministry of Energy reported strikes on energy infrastructure in the Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, Odessa, and Donetsk regions, causing damage to facilities. Meanwhile, in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a letter of intent allowing Ukraine to purchase up to 100 Rafale fighter jets over the next decade. Macron has stated that the agreement strengthens long-term defense, civilian and economic cooperation, while Zelensky has called the moment as historic. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Butler, former Associated Press Bureau Chief, joining us from Romania. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World today. I'd like to go through the information piece by piece. I want to understand from you, what are you picking up on the latest as far as the war on the ground is concerned?
Well, Russia is coming out with their own narrative. They are saying about successful strikes they've had, that they've attacked various energy depots, the infrastructure, places where they say there are mercenaries, as your report said. But the reports are very one-sided. It's true, Ukraine did say that the Russians had launched a big attack with Iskander missiles and they had repelled 91 drones, I think. So it's clear that Russia is attacking, but we don't have any confirmation. We don't have international media there on the ground. We don't have any UN or other organizations to give some independent verification. So while what Russia is saying is being reported, it doesn't mean it's entirely accurate. That said, I think from the reports we've seen in previous weeks, the Russians are stepping up their offensive before the winter sets in. Once the winter sets in, probably in a few weeks, at the beginning of December, it'll be much harder for them to do any warfare, particularly on the ground. The conditions will become very difficult with winter snow, with a lack of light, with problems with getting supplies to the front lines. So Russia is trying to take advantage of this window of opportunity, late autumn, before the winter. But while what they are saying, what their official defense ministry or the Kremlin are saying, it's being reported, it can't be independently verified. So that's why it's useful when Ukraine confirms there was an attack and that they repelled a number of drones. But it seems from the information we're getting that Russia is staging a multi-pronged attack in the east, in the south, in all the areas it can to put pressure on Ukraine, particularly before the winter comes.
Absolutely. And now I'd like to touch upon the second aspect of what I had addressed, the letter of intent inked between President Macron and President Zelensky. It calls for the sale of 100 Rafales from France to Ukraine over the course of a decade. That's, of course, a long-term project, but I also want to understand from you, as you have been studying this conflict very, very closely, reporting on it as well, what's really needed in the short term for Ukraine to sort of maintain its defenses? Because we do know that the US administration under Trump is not very keen on supplying Tomahawks.
Yes, that has been a particular problem for Zelensky, for Ukraine. Donald Trump hasn't outright said no, but he certainly hasn't said yes. And he's obviously using this as a bargaining chip before he meets Putin at some point. We don't know when that will be, but there is a promise that they will meet. So Ukraine has resorted to using its own Neptune, I think they're called long-term range missiles, which has been good for them. It shows a certain level of autonomy. But Ukraine is trying, it's two things with the war. They're trying to get as many military supplies. They need long-range missiles. They also need boots on the ground. And that's another problem. It's hard to get the military troops they need because a lot of people have died and, men aren't very keen to fight this war on both sides. So that is also another problem. But they are trying to get as many weapons as they can, but also for political reasons. I mean, the fact that Zelensky met Macron, who's one of the top leaders in Ukraine and has secured this long-term promise, that is bad news for the Kremlin. They don't need France to be on Ukraine's side. So that is also a psychological blow, which I think is why Russia is coming out now and perhaps overstating their attacks, the ferocity of them and the number of them. We're not sure. Or the damage those attacks, because you can do attacks and there isn't a lot of damage depending on how accurate they are. But Ukraine is trying to get as many weapons as it can as it needs. It needs a range of weapons, long term. It needs anti-drone, short term records. It needs tanks. And so they're trying to get as many as they can, both by their own production, but also by speaking to key Western partners, particularly in Europe, which has been more willing to provide Ukraine with the weaponry it needs than America, where Trump, to be honest, blows hot and cold.
Indeed, ma'am. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some further developments, this time from the United States of America. We're now learning that a US judge has found that there is evidence of misconduct in how a federal prosecutor aligned with President Trump secured criminal charges against James Comey. The judge has ordered that the grand jury materials be turned over to Comey's defense lawyers. Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick, based in Alexandria in Virginia, has stated that Lindsey Halligan, the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney leading the case, may have made significant legal errors in presenting evidence and instructing grand jurors, mistakes that could have tainted this case. Fitzpatrick wrote that the record points to a disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps that led an FBI agent and a prosecutor to potentially undermine the integrity of the grand jury proceeding. Comey is, of course, one of the three prominent critics of the president, who's recently been charged by Trump's Justice Department. Critics, meanwhile, say that the charges are part of a campaign to chill opposition. Comey pleaded not guilty to making false statements and obstructing a congressional investigation. So with us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Mutler. With this certain observation now being made by a U.S. judge with regards to how the evidence was handled in this particular case, does this then provide more ammo to Donald Trump's critics who've been following this case, more leverage to the Democrats as well?
Absolutely. For a start, as you mentioned, what Fitzpatrick said, and he, I think it was issued like a 24-page report. And that's a highly unusual step in itself. He's legally allowed to do it, but it's a highly unusual, and it does undermine the charges being brought against James Comey. And there's been a lot of criticism of the prosecutor leading this case, that she's a former personal attorney of Donald Trump, and she's not qualified for this level of investigation. And the fact that these concerns, these criticisms have been raised, that will further undermine it. I mean, it's basically seen that Donald Trump couldn't stand Jim Comey, so he is a political target for Donald Trump. Whether or not he did commit wrongdoing, there has to be a fair trial. There has to be rule of law. It has to be seen to not just to be a fair trial and and correct trial. It has to be seen to be a correct and fair trial. And what we're seeing now from what the judge in Virginia filed and the criticism leveled at the attorney leading the case, it's clear that the charges seem pretty flawed at the moment, and that definitely undermines Trump and the Trump administration and the legal case itself.
Absolutely, Ms. Butler. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World today. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus away from what's taking place in the United States to what's happening in India. A key suspect in the deadly car explosion that took place outside the Red Fort in New Delhi has appeared in court. He's accused of conspiring with a suicide bomber to carry out last week's attack near the Red Fort, which killed at least 12 people. This has been now clarified as a terrorist attack by the Indian government. Now, India's National Investigation Agency, that is the NIA, identified the suspect as Amir Rashid, stating that he travelled from Jammu and Kashmir to Delhi to help purchase the vehicle, which was later converted into a car-borne improvised explosive device. Investigators say that the car was used to trigger the blast that shook one of India's most iconic historic sites. Investigators have also announced the arrest of another suspect, identified as Jasir Bilal, who is accused of providing technical support to the attackers. Authorities say he allegedly worked on modifying drones and attempted to make rockets in preparation for attacks ahead of the Red Fort bombing. The NIA says that both suspects, along with the suicide bomber Umair Unnabi, are originally from Jammu and Kashmir. We, of course, have seen how Jammu and Kashmir too has faced tensions back in April with the terrorist attack in Pahalgam that claimed the lives of 26 people. In more news, Jeff Bezos, who stepped down as Amazon's CEO 4 years ago, is poised to return to the top executive role, but this time at an AI venture. The billionaire entrepreneur has named himself as co-CEO of a new artificial intelligence startup called Project Prometheus. The startup aims to advance AI technologies for engineering and manufacturing across multiple sectors, which has already secured an impressive $6.2 billion in funding and surpassing what many firms raise over their entire lifespans. Jeff Bezos will lead the company alongside co-founder and co-CEO Vic Bajaj, a well-known figure in the tech industry. Bajaj, a physicist and chemist, is widely recognized for his tenure at Google's moonshot factory, X, where he has founded the health-focused startup Verily. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, has called Jeff Bezos a copycat after Bezos announced his AI startup, as it's not the first time Musk has done so. Earlier, Musk accused Bezos when he announced plans to deploy internet beaming satellites in a bid to rival Musk's SpaceX. And again, when Amazon acquired NewsX, a self-driving car startup positioned to compete with Tesla. Well, viewers, this is all the time we have for in this particular bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.